what's up? This is Coline Creuzot, and you're checking out You Know I Got Soul.
Just wanted to get things started talking about your EP that you put out not too long ago, Acapella Now. Talk about that EP a little bit and the creative process behind it.
Well, I normally put out a mixtape every year, which I've been doing for the past 6 years. And it's always been, a great response and, more fun records, club records, stuff just to kind of build a buzz. And so 2012, I decided, I wanted to put something out with a little more substance, songs that were a lot more meaningful to me just in terms of the subject matter and the things that I was doing vocally on the records. And so I partnered up with Happy Perez, who's also from Houston. He did a single for me 4 years ago that was a big success for me on radio in Houston. And so I went to him and just started writing the project, and I did 3 songs with him and then 3 other songs with some different up-and-coming producers. So it just all came together.
Yeah. And, of course, you have the song You right now, which, the video just came out. How did that song come about?
That song is actually about a real-life story. I write a lot, as a form of, therapy, and, some people work out, some people, write music. Everybody has a different outlet. And so I went through a breakup at the end of 2011, and that's what that record is kind of about. So I got it out and went and recorded it, and everybody ended up loving it, so we ended up choosing that for the first single.
Yeah, cool. As far as your songwriting process, because I know you're a songwriter, so just talk about your process and how you put a song together generally.
I'm kind of strange, when I hear a track, the second that somebody plays it for me, I either hear something in my head in terms of melody and lyrics, or I don't. And so that's just kind of the way it was when I went to pick out the tracks for the EP. Most time a track will speak to me instantly. And my writing process is just I just kind of vibe out. It's a hard thing to explain how it happens, but it just flows.
Yeah. And can you kind of talk to me a little bit about the balance between being a songwriter versus being an artist? Because I know from a business and a musical standpoint, it's kind of different.
Yeah, it is, and it's kind of tough too. I've always considered myself an artist first. I actually got the opportunity to take a meeting with EMI 2 years ago, and my manager at the time was good friends with the vice president there, and he ended up signing me off of the song Acapella Now, actually.
Yep.
And so, from there, it's like a totally different side, like you're saying, because you have to kind of take yourself out of it sometimes and write a record that sounds more like somebody else. So, if there's a specific person that needs a record, you can still do you lyrically, but it's a different process in terms of, how you may attack a song vocally or the way you may sing it. So it's definitely been a blessing. It's been a learning process. I've gotten to meet a lot of really cool producers and other writers who, came on board for this EP. So it's a balance. I love it. I love doing both for different reasons. I love songwriting because I can write records I would never sing for myself, but, maybe a genre of music that I love. And then, on the artist side, it's just all me,
Yeah. And, you mentioned that you've already dropped a couple of mixtapes. Can you just talk about the progression in your sound since the first one dropped and, how it's developed since then?
Yeah, definitely. So the first mixtape I had was called Head Turner, and it had a very Houston vibe in terms of the music and, the production. Paul Wall actually DJ'd the mixtape and contributed to it, and my manager at the time was also a manager for Paul, so, we had a lot of love from Houston and the Houston rappers, Slim Thug, Lil Kiki, so it kind of had a more edgy sound, a more, Houston-type swag to it, and I think as time progressed, I became more comfortable in my writing and more comfortable in, doing ballads and records that I felt like really defined me as a person and as an artist versus, you know, doing records that I wanted everybody else to feel, or that would go hard in the club, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, from the mixtape, I noticed that partially because of the mixtape, you've been able to develop quite a big following and quite a big fan base. So, do you think the
Yeah.
mixtape route has been effective for you?
It definitely has. You know, it's funny because the way that I started my grind was kind of like a rapper. You know, we were putting out mixtapes, and you know, my manager had me in the club every night, which got old. But you know, when we were promoting records, we really attacked it like a rapper would do, which ended up being very beneficial for me in Houston at the time. And you know, I ended up getting a ballad on radio. They were playing a ballad in the club at night at one point. And so it was great. It helped me gain a fan base, you know, literally one person at a time. And it's been a lot of work, and I still have a long way to go. But I don't regret that route. I think it was a great route.
Yeah. And, you know, even with that, because a lot of new artists now, they'll put out mixtapes and they'll put out EPs, but it may not be as effective as what you've been able to do. So, aside from the mixtapes, what else do you think has been key to developing your fan base?
You know, I had a producer tell me a while back, you know, you're only as relevant as your last record. And so I try to always continue to record, you know, even if I'm uploading covers to my YouTube channel, I just try to stay relevant in whatever it is I'm doing. You know, it could be the smallest thing, like I said, you know, uploading a YouTube video. The fans will say, hey, I want to hear you sing Keisha Cole's new record. And so I'll go and upload that. You know, it's just always staying in contact and keeping your name out there and your face out there, which can be hard, but I think that people can forget about you so quick just because it's, you know, the internet makes music accessible to everybody at any time, and it's always a new artist, you know. So I think it's definitely staying connected with your fan base and continuing to release new music.
And, you know, initially, I know for a lot of new artists, such as yourself, when you first come out, the first and only goal for you is to sign with a major label. But now that you've been in the industry for a while now, is that still your main focus, to be signed?
You know, that's a kind of a trick question.
Yep.
Because, you know, definitely that's something that you want, because I think that it makes things a little bit easier when you have a machine behind you, you know. I think as an independent artist, it's kind of hard because you have to wear so many hats, you know, and that can be a great thing because, like I said, you learn a lot of things about yourself, about the business side, about, you know, gaining a fan base. And so I think definitely that would be an end goal, but I would want it to happen in the right way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to have a movement like Drake had, or have a movement like Kendrick Lamar. You know, he's been putting in all this time, and I think that's so important that you are you're valued to your label, and they see what everybody else sees in you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And, of course, for your journey so far, it hasn't been an instantaneous thing. You know, you've really had to grind and work for everything that you've had. So, throughout this entire process, was there any thought of you just wanting to be a writer and not even trying to be an artist anymore?
No, you know, people ask me that all the time. I was working with this producer, and he actually used to be an artist, and he was like, why do you want to be an artist? So much work. He's like, you know, look, we're sitting here, we're writing records for other people, and, you know, that's where the money is. Like, why do you want the stress and the headache? You know, and I kind of thought about it for a second, and I was like, wow, I mean, to the average person, that makes sense. You know, why not take the easy route, you know? But it's just always been in my heart to be an artist. It's just who I am. It's what I am. And, you know, when I write records, I want to sing them. I feel like, you know, nobody can do my record the way that I envision it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like a work of art for me. So, I mean, I love doing both, but it's my thing. It's what I've always wanted to do since I was a little girl. So, and you can write forever.
Yeah.
You know, I can be 65 writing a song. You don't have a shot at being an artist forever. So.
Yeah. And as far as the performance aspect of your career, I know you were on the BET Music Matters tour. So talk a little bit about that and how that helped your confidence.
Yeah, definitely. So my former manager got me on that campaign, and it was a really cool campaign. El Bonner was a part of it. J. Cole was a part of it. It was a lot of really cool up-and-coming people. So I was just honored to be able to be amongst that group of people and learn about, new artists. So I think it was definitely a plus. It helped me gain some exposure and get to, reach some new people. So it was definitely a blessing.
Cool. And as far as what you have coming up, what's next for you?
Well, the next step is definitely to get some shows booked, so we're working on that. And I keep everything updated via my Twitter page and my Facebook so that, people can be informed. And we're actually gearing up to drop the second single. So I'm about to go back in and do a video for that and kind of get everything set in motion for the release date, which will probably be early March.